You make it sound easy, but that's a risky business.
It was. It was fun.
You started at 5 or 6 million in revenue. Where do you get up to?
We grew it to 72 million. It was just like boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
It was an amazing ride.
Tell us about how you sold this business.
I'd say both of us ended up being great winners.
What's the difference between risk and calculated risk? I think about this all the time because on paper, Chris Meyer's story sounds completely insane. I mean, just imagine, he's paying for materials he doesn't have a buyer for yet. Take or pay contracts. He's expanding into markets where he has no customers. But the reality is, he wasn't gambling. He was calculating. Exclusivity clauses before he signed a thing. Relationships with his suppliers that were so deep that in 2008, when everything hit the fan, his suppliers worked with him instead of against him. That's not reckless. That's preparing to meet the opportunity. Welcome back to The Turn. I'm Corey Mitchell of Iconic Founders. The Turn is where blue-collar founders talk about the businesses they've built, the value they've created, and what comes next after they sell. Take us back to the beginning. Where did the entrepreneurial itch come from?
That's a great question. I was very fortunate. I grew up here in middle of Ohio, and my grandfather was an entrepreneur from a farming side, and my father took that and really kind of ran with it. He was, he had a job as an accountant, and all of a sudden my mother was a home ec teacher, and he read an article in a newspaper, local newspaper, that gave him an opportunity to start up a medical business. So he quit his job. They lived on my mother's teaching salary, just got married, a couple young kids, and they started up a medical business in a living room. And we're doing billings a night, got it started, and he kind of really transformed and grew that medical business. Kind of got tired with, raising a family and trying to run the business. So they exited. 2 years later, they're sitting at a Christmas party, and here they are. And one guy was looking to get out of the business, and he wanted to sell his piece. So he got into the foundry business. So what do you know about the foundry business? Nothing, quite frankly. Just more the willingness to learn. And then kind of got involved with some other kind of crazy different companies over the years. So I guess I've always had a great mentor with my parents and kind of always had that itch. But just to be open with you, I really wanted to do my own thing, I guess, have my own course and not to get in a family business. And something that's been instilled in me, and actually something I set up as my own personal why, which is very similar to my father, is like encouraging others to take calculated risks so that dreams may be fulfilled and celebrated. If you have that celebration environment and culture of a business, it's amazing how much buy-in you really get.
I sort of feel like there are people that are built to be owners, and there are people that are built to be entrepreneurs and create businesses. What made you realize that you were the latter?
When I was going through college, my undergrad, I switched over, got a degree in marketing and finance. Why do marketing and finance? I just remember saying, if you know how to put the numbers together, you can understand what your margins are, what should you be looking at from operating a business. And the other side of the marketing is how do you sell your products, which is fundamentally, the number one thing you got to be able to do is you got to be able to sell,
right.
But you got to be selling product at, something you can sustain and to be able to grow a business. So when those two came along, actually, it was a great program with Ernst Young that is non-accounting majors, that they were looking for accountants during that Sarbanes-Oxley time period. So really the great program that they had set up, I was like, it's hard to pass up not to go be an accountant. I'm like, you know what? Throw me in all the industries. I just want to see as many different industries, may it be healthcare, manufacturing, retail, construction, you name it. I was in it. I love just seeing the diversification of all the different industries. I always say I love understanding business models and how, the different businesses are successful. I think early on, it was a great environment to learn. You work hard, you work long hours, you're around a bunch of smart, hardworking, motivated people. What a great environment to be in. And then it was like, all right, I was ready to go look for that next opportunity.
Chris didn't stumble into entrepreneurship. He trained for it, and then his time came.
I was over at Ernst Young, probably working 60, 80-hour work weeks. And they had us hopping around, flying all over or doing stuff locally or trying to meet the various deadlines. And I took advantage of when I had the nights, weekends, vacations. I was out there meeting with bankers, lawyers, accountants, business brokers for about 2.5 years while doing the Ernst Young. So during that time period, went through probably 400 business plans,
Okay.
just from startups to patents to here's an existing business and some different avenues. And I'm like, I'm just wide open. I had a kind of a list of criteria of what we wanted to say, what the businesses that I was going to ideally look for. I really didn't care what industry.
Tell us what some of those things were you were looking for.
I wanted a company that was profitable at that point. I wanted owners that were looking to transition for the right reasons. And they wanted to kind of really be able to see their legacy continue and pass on to the right buyer at that point. And I wanted them to be part of that transition, especially at the time. It was a smaller business. So it's very important that we didn't want to lose that intellectual knowledge, the institutional knowledge that they had of the business from the founding and what it took to get there. And I always say when we stepped into the business and we finally closed on a deal, you know, we didn't want to change a lot of things. So I really wanted to understand what those changes are. And just from a cash flow, hey, here's a criteria of here's the minimum I want to be able to see. I didn't want a complete different turnaround story when I was getting into the business. Is there a model that we could be able to expand and what kind of scale? And was there an opportunity and that you could do exponential growth with it? And if you're in I call it just a cash cow business and it's just staying flat, it's kind of boring. We want something that you're going to wake up and say, what are we taking on next? Let's go get them.
Totally. So how did you source them? I mean, there's so many people out there looking for companies today. What are your recommendations for finding a good one?
It's a tough process. The biggest thing I was going to say is reach out there because who are business owners that are maybe in that transition time period? Who are they talking with? And there's people that they're close with of, the bankers, they're usually aware of what's going on. The accountants that are out there, go spend the time and meet with a variety of different accounting firms and find the accounting firms that are dealing with the right size businesses that you're looking for. I mean, to go to an Ernst Young would have been way outside of my realm, right?
Yeah.
So you're finding the local ones and even some of the attorneys and get the word out. Business brokers, get the word out and network as you're at social events. I'm out there actively looking. And it's amazing I think you find with a lot of people when you talk to them at the right time, when they're ready, like, it's time for me to move on. You say that at the right time, it's like, that could be the right fit.
What kind of business did you find? What was Mintech?
They specialized in taking byproducts of different industries. A lot of different types of like lime kiln dust, cement kiln dust, and had a core product called cow cement. That was our labeling that we put onto it, was a product that met a certain standard from a chemistry side. And that was at the time when I first got into it, they were getting into a little bit into the construction, environmental, and the biosolid markets. And I'm like, okay. But it was very kind of more regionalized at the time. And as I started doing more research, I'm like, there's an opportunity to kind of expand, grow geographically and with some of the applications of these different products. So what I knew about it, I didn't know anything, Corey. I saw the business model, the growth, opportunity to kind of put some contracts, professionalism to the business, put some of that, the knowledge that you learn from Ernst Young into the business. And next thing you know, it was like, all right, this is the right fit. And we hit the ground up and running, and you're reading chemistry books at night. That's what I was back to doing.
Amazing. So how small or big was this business when you bought it?
So at the time, their sales, they were right at they were doing right at about 5-6 million at the time.
Okay. $5 or $6 million. And how'd you pay for it?
It's a great question. Met with the owners. I knew it was a one night, and that you've looked at a lot of businesses, and this one kind of piqued your interest. So I'm like, you know what, we're getting an LOI done pretty quickly. So then it's like, how do you pay for it? How do you put this stuff together? And after meeting them with one dinner, we had an LOI drafted up that night in their hands the next day. And we had them take back an owner's note on part of it that we set up as a consulting agreement, which was a great fit. So it was tax deductible. And then we were able to get into really working with the bankers at the same time and negotiating. I went to 6, 7 different banks, kind of laid it out. And they're looking at me saying, all right, how's this young kid at the time of, call it 27 years old? But really the story of here's the avenues. I was great at putting forecasts together, the financials, the analysis. And at the time, back in 2006, the banks were willing to lend a lot more than they were a little more aggressive than they were today. And I'll never forget the day, we closed onto it, got the deal done. And I just loaded up and I told my wife, I said, we are way in the hole, just so you know, because, we risked everything that we had, put everything on the line and then some. And I was like, okay. And a guy walked up to me, he said, run from debt like your hair's on fire. What did I just sign up for? But I looked at that as that's an opportunity to have the motivation. When you had something you had to pay back, let's go deliver on it. And we never missed a payment to the owners during that time period. We never missed a payment to the bank. And it was a great fit.
Awesome. Thankfully, the owner was willing to roll with you on the.
They were
willing
to roll with us and be part of that. I think we spaced it out over 5 years over the cycle. So they were very patient, which helped me quite a bit. And it was just as important for them to see the business succeed. And I think that's that's when I say when you got to find the right seller to find the right buyer too.
You've just taken on life-changing debt that, puts your entire livelihood at risk. That's pretty nerve-wracking. What do you do to take the business from $5 or $6 million and start putting some things in place to grow it and change it?
When we first got in, I took the first 6 months and really didn't do anything. To be honest with you, I'm like, I just want to see they're making certain kind of money. And I just want to learn from the people who we have, like who are going to be the champions, who's embracing this transition and the opportunity to, hey, and I talked about let's grow it, but let's not do anything. Let's understand it. I was going to say, learn the industry. I didn't know anything about the industry. So you had to learn the industry. Who are the players? Who are the great customers? Build those relationships. So probably the biggest thing is it's just learning is what I spent most of my time. And I'm like, all right, I dove into the numbers right away and really worked with our controller at the time. And she still picks on me saying, why did you come to me first? It's probably because I was most comfortable there. And like, how do we start to better analyze what our margins are? How are we looking at our expenses? So that was something to me I called the low-hanging fruit to start to understand. At the same time, then diving in, and I spent a lot of time on the road just being with customers. Because if you really, and I call it, just asking good questions with your customers, they're going to tell you what you got to do and how you got to improve, especially the good partners that are out there, the ones that you see that are going to help take you to the next level. That's where I just asked questions a lot and just wrote notes. One of the biggest things that I learned from my grandmother, who worked at a community blood bank, and she had one of the largest communities and the biggest blood drives. She always took the time and wrote a thank you note. So every time I met anybody new in business, I took the time within a day of meeting them. I wrote a thank you note, put the business card, and I sent it out in a personalized note, just really appreciating what they've done and the opportunity to be able to work with them. Big part is building that trust. It takes years to earn and seconds to lose.
That's right.
what are you going to do to build their trust as quick as possible? Those were some of the first things that I really started implementing. And at that point, then we're, getting the team and start to pick up saying, all right, here's a territory or a new application where we could take our products where we might be able to get a little better margin. And a lot of times where in our world, everybody was kind of operating on dollar increments. I said, what's wrong with 50 cents or 60 cents?
Yeah.
And you started spacing that out over tons of, more and more volume out there. It all adds up little piece by little piece. Next thing you know, you just ask customers the one simple question: what else can we do for you? And just be quiet. And they'll usually tell you. And next thing you know, we were growing from just being in a Indiana, Michigan, Ohio company. And next thing we're expanding, and we're bigger into Pennsylvania. We're in Virginia. We're getting into Tennessee. We're in Kentucky. And the company just started expanding. And customers were organically pulling us into those, saying, you did such a good job here. What can you do for me there?
What were some of the challenges of working farther away from home?
We were in a very unique environment. A lot of our stuff, as we were starting to expand, we had to go in, and because a lot of our supply were byproducts of different industries. So you had to learn how that manufacturing process, the consistency of what they were making. So building the relationship from a supply. And then you probably had no customers in those areas, or maybe a couple that you could identify. And then we had to turn around and we did what's known as like take or pay contracts. We had to pay for it whether we moved it or not. So we were signing up for liabilities to say, we're going to move your product and we believe we are the best ones to go do it. And they had a guaranteed revenue stream off of this. So by doing that, that was the motivation. Like, we got to break even here as we're continuing to grow it. So we really spent a lot of the time of the biggest challenges. So we're coming into new markets. How do we secure more supply? Because logistically, you can only take materials so far before the economics didn't work. So continuing to build relationship with suppliers as we're branching out, and then quickly adding maybe the right salesperson or stretching our existing sales team, tap into those new markets. And we were very fortunate. We were able to exponentially grow with only adding a couple team members at a time. That part helped quite a bit, as opposed to having to, from a sales perspective, we didn't have to add as many people in the effort to grow.
I want to make sure I fully understand, because this sounds a little hairy to me. So you're getting farther and farther away from home, and then you have this, what you're calling a take or pay contract. And just so I understand, the way I think I understand it is, you identify some byproduct source, right?
Yep.
Some whatever that is. So there's a pile of stuff out there that's a byproduct that you think you can move and sell somewhere else for more money than you pay for it. And when you take or pay, you're literally saying to them, whether I find a buyer or not, I'm paying you.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
So that sounds scary as hell. First of all, did you ever get burned?
When we would go in to get these contracts, the biggest part was we'd get exclusivity. That was something that was very near and dear, because as you build a market, you didn't want to have your customers come back and circumvent you, right? So I was going to say, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably twice that happened. But majority of the people with the suppliers that we were working with, we built, as the business owner, that's where I had to spend majority of my time, is really on to the supply side. Because if you had the right relationships, they continued to always work with us. And majority of them, we've had some of the best, strongest relationships. And I couldn't say enough good things about those people, and miss working with a lot of those people. And our sales team was dedicated towards the sales side, but I probably did a little bit of both, to be honest with you.
Okay, maybe he never got burned, but this is risky. Betting you can figure it out before the bills come due. And then 2008 came.
A couple of our suppliers went offline because they lost their demand. And we were scrambling, like, we have all this business, our customers, but we don't have the supply now.
Oh, wow.
So out of that turn in 2008, when I said never let a good crisis, go to waste,
Yeah.
That was a pivotal moment where I said, you know what, we're growing. We're starting to grow outside the areas because we had to. We had to figure out then the logistics. How do we even just supply our existing customers to ensure that we're a reliable supplier for them?
So that was actually a period of opportunity for you. So you took this crisis and you figured out, well, how the hell am I going to take care of my customers, even if it's farther away, I guess? Or
Yep.
or were you able to find supply in the same geography? You weren't.
No, usually
Oh,
it was like at that point we tied up our primary area where most of our customers. It was starting to go out geographically, and to figure out more creative ways on how we could set backhauls up with customers in order to provide that, similar pricing to meet the demand. So we worked very closely with a lot of our carriers. It was almost like we treated our suppliers, carriers, and customers all like customers.
well, that's exactly where I was going to take this, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm buying your product. I can't afford to pay you to haul it from New York City. It's not the math's not going to work for me. So how do you handle dealing with that extra freight charge?
When we went out there and you put a quote or something together, it's like, hey, that was our word. So sometimes we took hits because we knew in the long run, penny smart, pound foolish, we were going
Yep.
to deliver. But when it came down to the next project that they were working on or quoting, hey, we need a little more help here. We made sure that we got you whole. We took it, but how can we be partners together? And this is what I'm against, and here understand what you're up against. So how can we make this a win-win for both of us? So that was really the philosophy that we took.
I mean, you make it sound easy, but that's a risky business.
It was. It was fun. The biggest challenge of it, and that's what started as you go, say, the next level of risk where we started to go in is, if your supply went offline or your customers would slow down, you're like, where do I go with all this material? Or your customers are peaking up here, but I don't have enough supply. That's when it really forced us to say, we got to look at storage. And you start putting in the capital expenditures of putting in large silo systems or getting very creative on how can we use partner with customers on their sites to put material or storage pigs that are out there or remote silos and signing leases in order to help meet those ebb and flows of the business.
The oil and gas boom hits. Drill rigs showing up in the middle of farm fields. But there's a problem. How do you get 80,000-pound rigs out to the middle of nowhere on a dirt road? But Chris had a solution. His product could stabilize soil. They were already using it on runways, building pads. Why not drilling sites? And so the customers came to him.
Can you guys treat the drill cuttings from every hole that they punch? We need these to be treated because we can't be running liquids down the road, but we can't have it in large containers. And they're like, can you put them in 1-ton bags? Yeah, we could do that. We didn't have any connections at the time. So next thing you know, we built out a bagging network where, put them in 1-ton super sacks. And instead of taking 25-ton shipments, next thing you know, the opportunity in that market just exploded for us. And they were doing them for slip repairs into the oil and gas industry as they were running the midstream, all the pipelines in. Because how are you going to get a big truck up and down hills? You're not. So we'd bring in delivering super sacks. That was kind of an interesting fit for us.
Wow. This business is really exploding. You've now got all these new service lines. You're doing everything from manufacturing, you're storing materials, you've got new service lines. You've really grown and scaled this business. Let's get to a point where you're thinking about selling it. I'm curious, first of all, you started at 5 or 6 million in revenue. Where do you get up to?
Time we got out of this and we grew it to 72 million.
Wow. What an amazing success story.
It was an amazing ride.
So tell us about how you sold this business. How did the conversation start?
We were approached at different times. Obviously, the brokers are calling you constantly or, hey, you interested? And I'm like, no, we're growing. We're having fun. But at that point, is like I had a supplier that reached out. We had a long partnership. Even the whole time period I was involved, even prior to me getting involved with the previous owners, we just had a good working relationship that they said like, oh, you did a great job here. Hey, do you have interest in coming over here? And then can you come over here? And next thing you know, we had a very wide network with them. And they're like, where are you guys going with all this? And what are you guys doing? And how are you able to do it? Uh, so it was almost like a courting process of probably about 2 to 3 years before they would come up and we'd like to know more. And it was a real challenge between how do you tell your supplier what you're doing and here's my financials.
The courting process is different for everybody. There's so many ways this can go down. Sometimes you're getting a random phone call from a stranger that's a random investment banker calling, just fishing for information. Sometimes you're getting these robo emails. Sometimes private equity guys are calling you and you don't really know who to trust or what's real. And sometimes it's a strategic partner.
So it was kind of a game of chess going through it. But eventually we were able to come to the right price that I'd say both of us ended up being great winners, because the organization today is, every year I was involved, we grew. And even today, they're continuing to grow and to take it to new platforms, and recently actually acquired our largest competitor previously.
Awesome. When you structured the deal, did you get all the money up front? Did you roll any equity? Do you still have any ownership?
So I looked at it as, I was probably on the conservative side. Probably had, they offered an opportunity to roll some equity. But for myself, I guess it is probably more the unknown. So we did, majority of it was up front, and majority of the money was all up front. We did do a little bit of a note, a small piece of a note, because they wanted to keep me tied in. And I did a 3-year employment agreement with them that ended up being over probably 3.5 years. And also they kind of put a good carrot and incentive to say, hey, keep growing, doing what you're doing. So hold on, let's go. It was almost like a bonus plan is the way it was set up.
And did you hit the bonus?
We did. And I will say one of the proudest things I did, and I take this from Clay Mathiel and one of his books of, as he went through, we shared, my wife and I sat down, we had a talk as we're going through the due diligence, and, you're just worn out and you're battling through those, working late at night and trying to grow your business, maintain it. We sat down and said, we want to share some of this with our people. And we set some incentives, and, we actually took part of our exit and shared it with the entire organization, because we knew we would never have been where we were if it wasn't for that team.
Yeah, I love that. That is so cool. And look, your team is, I'm sure, incredibly grateful for your generosity through that. But I get it. They also got you where you are.
I always thought that, if I could take that team and we went into any other business, we would have killed it in another business, just because the way everybody was rowing in the same direction and everybody's on board. And I don't know, there's a lot of energy and that I loved, and the entrepreneurship of that group and organization. And, even I worked to appoint a new president that took over after I left, and was able to pick that myself. So really our parent organization that acquired us allowed that and to go through. And I love to see that what she's doing today is just as important. And, some of the tools that we put in place, she's carrying that torch forward, which is awesome.
That is great. So how did your life change? I mean, you get this big check. What did that feel like?
We were exhausted. I didn't even know. I mean, I logged on, the day you get it, and you're just like, it's there.
The money arrived.
My wife and I were doing pretty much all the due diligence and, on top of trying to maintain the business, and we were growing at the time. We didn't want to disrupt our team. It was very important, obviously, as we worked with a lot of different suppliers and our customers, we didn't that word to get out. So we were just exhausted. So what did we do? We did nothing.
Okay.
I knew I still had a 3-year employment agreement after that. And I'm like, we're going to take this organization and we're going to grow it. Because one, there's another, piece that if we hit another bogeys, there's another payout opportunity. And let's go have some fun and really expand it. And they're giving us more materials, additional support, things that we never, that we didn't have at the time, in-house counsel, different things that as you're going through, and a lot of that fell on me. Some CEOs, you're like, I just can't do it. I really flipped the switch because it's a challenge as you exit and you're working with people. And I'm like, take on this challenge and make the most of the opportunity. You got 3 years. Let's see how it goes, and let's see this thing succeed. And we grew the company like crazy during that time period. Those 3.5 years, it was just like boom, 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 boom. So it was really exciting. It was a lot of fun.
Do you regret that you sold too early?
No. The reason being, I knew where the organization was probably at the point where it was going to take another significant large investment when we're talking storage capabilities and, the territory that we had and some of our competitive environment. I was like, kind of took it about where I could get it. Otherwise, we're going to have to make a big transition and kind of hop into some new frontiers. And it was a right fit. I mean, I think it was the right timing. Do I wish, in hindsight, everybody wants to be a Monday morning quarterback. You wish you rolled equity. But I really, it was a clean break that, the two of us were both happy with an exit. So, and at that point in my life, I wasn't looking to sell the business. I didn't want to, but I knew what was right for the business if we're going to continue to, one, take care of our people, have the presence, maintain our office. And this was a good purchaser. And at post-acquisition, we did a lot of promotions. They told us, go get a bigger office. What else can we help support you? How do we pour fuel on your fire?
Yeah. So how's your life changed since you exited?
I probably reprioritized my life. I was running 80,000 miles a year in a car, traveling. You're getting the statuses with the airlines because you're flying as we were growing, and mostly east of the Mississippi. Some stuff we were doing out west too. And we're just constantly on the road. And I hate to say that we had 3 children, and my oldest, it was like a flash. And I look back and like, you know what? I want to reprioritize. And I look at that. I want to spend time with my family. I look at my kind of at that golden age where our kids were healthy. My parents are healthy. I wanted to spend some time with them. And, I've been able to do some trips with both, my wife's family, my family. I've done one-on-one trips with my father, my mother, my, spouse, and really just continue to each one of our kids to have that special relationship. And one of the other big things I was going to say of trying to be a better friend, because I was gone. I was just running wide open. And what else has changed? I stepped back and I had a good friend that was with NYPO that approached me. He goes, obviously you got a great business experience, but could you take those skills and go put that in a different avenue? I'm like what? He goes, hey, we got a Boys and Girls Club over here. We got a new CEO. I think you would be great if you were to join the board. And really put a lot of effort to saying, take all those skills that we learned and to figure out how we can give back to other communities, to be able to put the time, the effort, and the skills, connections that we've been able to build over the years into our community. And really proud of that as that comes online and watching the organization grow. We added to the board, just giving back and having that presence again.
That's great. Well, listen, you've given our listeners and viewers a lot of wisdom. I think there's so much that we can take away. And so I certainly appreciate you making the time for us. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for you. And I'm hoping to have you back on the show in 10 years so we can talk about the next one.
I appreciate it, Corey, and great questions. And thank you, Corey.
Here's what I love about how Chris sold Mintech. He didn't run this traditional investment banking process where hundreds of people were making a bid on him. The buyer came to him. This was a supplier, someone he'd known for over a decade. They spent 2-3 years courting. This wasn't a transaction. This was a real relationship. Because once you've built something real, you'd know the difference between a good opportunity and the right one. This was never just about Chris. His grandfather was an entrepreneur. His parents started a business at the kitchen table. And when he and his wife built Mintech together, it was a partnership. And when they sold it, shared with the team. I'm Corey Mitchell. Thanks for watching The Turn, a podcast by Iconic Founders Group. Listen, we're just building out this channel, and we're having a heck of a lot of fun doing it, but we need subscribers. So please like it, subscribe if you can, and forward it to a friend. We'd really appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, please go check out my previous interview with Tom Hedlund. He had an incredible story. Let's win.